Hello, so I'm just going to try and tell you something about working directories, relative paths and absolute paths. So I've started off by setting myself up a bit of directory structure or folder structure if you prefer. So I've got one here called My R Work. You might have something called My Statistics or Scientific and Transferable Skills or something along those lines. And inside here I've got two folders, Branch A and Branch B. And inside Branch A, I've created three more folders, one called Data, one called Functions, and one called Scripts. So that gives you an overview of what my directory structure is like. And now I'm going to start R up. And where R starts up isn't necessarily where my files are going to be. So I can find out where my working directory is. I'll start a script here by typing getwd. So this is going to tell me where my current working directory is. Get working directory it stands for. So it's telling me my current working directory is on the desktop. So what I probably want to do is set my working directory to somewhere more useful. So I'm going to choose a directory, and the directory I'm going to choose is going to be my R. So I'm choosing my R here, and I think I'll leave it at that. So let's move me here, select folder. So if I run that get working directory command again, you can see now I'm in a folder called My R Work. So the things that I can see from My R Work, I can find out by running the command dir. So if I run that command, you can see the folders here, Branch A and Branch B. So what I'm going to do is save this script file to one of my folders. So let's save this in Branch A, in Scripts, and let's call it first.r. Whoops. Hang on. There we go. So now that this folder file is saved, but that isn't in my working directory. So if I type dir, or if I run the command dir again, I'm still in the same place. So if to see that file, I will have to put in here where it is. So let's try Branch A. So in Branch A, I can see those three folders. In order to see what's inside Scripts, I'm going to need Branch A, and then a slash, and then Scripts. And there you can see that file there. So your working directory is not the same file, necessarily the same place as your script file is saved. In this case, they're in different places. However, I think it quite often makes sense to make your working directory where your script file is. So the way we can do that is just go to Session, set your working directory, and then to the source file location. So you can see now it's changed my working directory to the scripts folder. And now if I type dir on its own and run it, I can see that script file. So what happens if I want to read some files in? So let me go to web page here, and that'll do. And I'm going to download this file bwing.txt. So I'm going to right click on it here, save link as, and where I'd like to save it to is in My R Work, in Branch A, and I'm going to save it into Data. So I'm just saving that file into Data, and then I'm going to go back to R. So I do have that file. I'll be able to see it down here in the files. So here's Branch A, here's Data, there's the file, so it's definitely there. If I try and read this file in, I'm going to read it into something called B. So let's call it bwing.txt. So I'm just going to try and read that file in now, and I'm going to get an error. So I'm getting an error because when you run dir, you can't see a file called bwing.txt. What I need to do is tell it where bwing.txt is relative to where I am now. So I am currently in this thing called scripts. So I'm going to need to go up a directory and then look for a folder called data. So up a directory, we say ... So this is what we mean by relative path. It means specifying the path relative to where you are now. Oops. So where I am now is in scripts. I'm going to go up a directory, so up into branch A in this case, and then I'm going to look for a file called data. Oops. And then for a file called bwing.txt. So this is the this is the relative path for bwing.txt, meaning it's relative to where my working directory is. So if I run this now, it will read in. So now you can see I've got something called b.txt. If I change my working directory, so if I just change my working directory here, choose a directory, and I go up a directory, so I've changed my working directory. If I try this now, I'll just read it to B2, it's going to complain. So it's going to complain because if I go up a directory from where I am now, I'm currently in branch A, if I go up to my work, there is no folder called data. So if I wanted to specify where the file is relative to where I am now, because I'm in branch A, I can see what I've got here. Whoops. So I can go straight to data. So in fact, if I read this in without the ... slash, just look for a directory called data and bwing is in there. And if I read that in, you'll see now it's read in again as b.2. So these are what we call relative paths, meaning they are relative to where your current working directory is. An absolute path is where you specify the full path. So for example, for this one, bwing.txt, let me just look at the properties here. The absolute path is all of this stuff. So I'll just copy that. And it's all the wrong way around for Windows slashes, they do it the wrong way around. So an absolute path is where you say exactly where the file is on your system. So the only trouble with using absolute paths is that this is not going to work when I upload an entire directory structure. Whereas with this, with the relative paths, I can get that folder, my R work, copy that and everything that's inside it somewhere else. And then if the data files are specified relative to where the script file is, they will still work. Whereas as soon as I put in this C:, then any other file system is not going to be able to find this structure because it is an absolute path name, not a relative path name. So I recommend you always use relative path names. And that's all for now. Bye.